WCD officials and our own parliamentary officials. Welcome to the Standing Committee meeting of Education today. My name is Lorraine Botha. I'm the chairperson for the Standing Committee. I'm going to give an opportunity to all members to introduce yourselves, as well as all officials WCED to do likewise. Thank you. I'm giving over to you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Good afternoon to the officials. Regan Allen.
Good afternoon, fellow Christians.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. I'm Gillian Postman.
Thank you very much. I'm going over to the WCED.
Chair, good afternoon, and good afternoon to all members in the House. I'm Archie Lewis. I'll ask my colleagues also are in the meeting just to introduce themselves.
Erna Veldman, Chief Director Financial Management.
Chair, it seems at this point it's just the two of us. The other members may join us at some point.
Okay. All right. I'm just ascertaining, Mr. Lewis, between you and Ms. Veldman, who is doing the presentation on the collaboration schools?
Chair, I will leading it, but we are actually 4 people that will speak to the presentation.
Okay, so I take it the other 2 will still join us.
They will still join us, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Badal.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon to all the members. I'm Karen Bidell, Chief Evaluator of the Schools Evaluation Authority.
Thank you very much. I note that Member Said has joined. If you can introduce yourself for the record.
May I also introduce myself in the meantime?
Please go ahead, Member Kama.
Yes, it's Member Mesuli Kama, alternate member. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Member Said. Gone. I also want to extend a welcome to Mr. Ben Daza, who is the Senior Procedural Officer, as well as our very capable Ms. Wasima Hassan Musa, who is the Procedural Officer attached to the Standing Committee of Education. Thank you very much, members. Member Said, I note your hand. Member Kama, lower your hand.
My apologies, Chair. I was trying to log in and I didn't realize that I was on. This is Member Syed, member of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Your voice is very cracky. It comes through very cracky. We don't hear you very, very clearly. I'm just indicating to you. Members, just the rules of engagement for this standing committee meeting. Please switch off your mic as well as your video camera, just to ensure that we have good, clear voice noting on this platform. And then I will afford you the opportunity, if it is your turn to speak, you may put on both your video camera as well as your mic. The video camera is optional to you, but you may use it if you wish to do so. Then in terms of wanting to speak, please use the raise your hand function on your taskbar, or you may put a note in the chat line so that I can see that. And then members, especially to the department, when you present to us, you may put your presentation up, and then I'm going to just ensure that after the presentation, when we do the Q&A, that you take your presentation off the screen. Members, I'm going to take advice from you. We have today the Western Cape Department of Education with us. They're going to brief us on the School Evaluation Authority as well as collaboration schools. Now I'm taking my cue from you. Do we do the first presentation, then we take a round of Q&A, and then go to the second presentation? Or do we do both presentations and then only thereafter do our Q&A? I'll take advice from you. None? Going? Gone? Members, I will then do this. I will take both presentations and then thereafter only take your questions. I also want to say at this point in time, for those people that are joining us via YouTube, as well as the media, please be welcomed in the Standing Committee meeting. Then, with no further ado, Ms. Badal, I will give over to you to do the presentation on the School Evaluation Authority. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. May I ask Ms. Hassan Musa to put up the presentation which I forwarded to her on Friday?
Sure, we can do that. Wasima, can you assist with that, please?
Just hold 1 second, Chair.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hassan Musa. Good afternoon to everybody. Could I ask you to go to the next slide? Thank you very much. The School Evaluation Authority was established on the 1st of October 2019. It is governed by the Western Cape Provincial School Education Act 1997, Act 12 of 97, which will be referred to as the Act hereafter, and the regulations on the Western Cape Schools Evaluation Authority 2019, published under Provincial Notice 47 in the Provincial Gazette 8079 on the 11th of April 2019. When I was appointed on the 1st of October, I set to work by establishing a vision for the SEA as well as branding it. And the vision is simple and crisp. It is to improve schools in the Western Cape through strengthening school accountability. Schools need support from various layers of the Department of Education. However, what happens at the school is very important for school accountability and improvement. So I thought it best to also give the schools some leeway to work on their own, within their own context, to see how improvement can be brought about. One of the issues that we always raise is that schools, we look at schools in their context. And so we do make allowance for the school's context, but it is not used as an excuse. With regards to the branding of the SEA, you would notice that there's the scales of justice, and then a school proudly exhibiting a national flag, and then a report, as well as the SEA logo. The logo is based on the SEA's vision and as well as values. The most important values that we will base all our work on would be accountability, quality, and respect. There were many other values that came to mind, such as ethics as well as integrity. But when I analyzed the values and I looked at the work of the SEA, and in particular how applicable it should be to schools, I settled on accountability, because there has to be accountability throughout the system, the various levels of the system. There must be quality in order for improvement to take place. We must avoid accepting mediocrity, and also the work of the school's evaluation authority must be of good quality. And last but not least, respect. Respect going both ways, working both ways. Myself as the chief evaluator and my team showing respect to the schools, and the schools respecting our work and showing respect to the team. Once I had set about finalizing the vision and the branding for the SEA, I developed an annual program for 2020. However, with all the developments in 2020, the annual program has been revised somewhat. However, we were able to go into schools in the first term of 2020, and I'll talk about that a little later. In January 2020, the Western Cape Education Department provided the SEA with 2 administrative support staff, and at the end of January 2020, 2 lead evaluators and 2 evaluators were appointed. That means we have a staff of 7. And in February 2020, we moved into our offices, which is situated in the Norton Rose Building, Riebeck Street, Cape Town. Next slide, please. The functions of the SEA. In terms of section 11D, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of the Act, the Chief Evaluator has to fulfill the following functions. 1, shall keep the Provincial Minister of Education informed about the quality of education provision at schools, and that would be mainly through the reports generated by school evaluations. 2, shall, upon written request by the Minister, advise her on any matter specified in the request. So the Minister it's possible for the Minister to make a request to the Chief Evaluator, asking for advice, but also recommending that giving certain recommendations. Thirdly, The Chief Evaluator shall compile and publish reports as prescribed, and that is as prescribed in the Act and the regulations, which include empirical findings and recommendations for improvement. That means all reports have to be based on evidence and on visits to schools. The SEA may not publish a report unless a team of evaluators has visited the school, has observed school in operation, and has conducted interviews with key stakeholders. The SEA, the Chief Evaluator may on 2 days' notice to the District Director, Principal and Governing Body obtain access to and evaluate a school. And I would like to commend the schools at this stage because up until 2 weeks ago, not one school had objected to short written notice. This is a very, very short period compared to the previous system of evaluation. 1 or 2 principals have questioned why it is so short, especially when the school down the road had a month's written notice, and when the situation was explained to them, accepted the team and was very, very welcoming. The Chief Evaluator may, without notice, enter a school and seize financial records, statements and documents if there is prima facie proof of financial mismanagement or reasonable suspicion that such records will be hidden, destroyed, or tampered with if notice is given. And last but not least, the Chief Evaluator may, without notice, evaluate a school if there are reasonable grounds to believe that it is necessary for the effective performance of the functions of the SEA. Now, the last 2 points. No situation has arisen to give me any cause for concern, and so I have worked according to the annual program in the main. None of the schools visited thus far have been visited because there has been any suspicion around activities or any complaints about how the school has been operating. Next slide, please. In terms of Section 11D6, A, B, and C of the Act, the Provincial Minister may, after consultation with the Chief Evaluator, authorize her to perform additional duties or exercise additional power if the Minister has reason to believe that 1, the Chief Evaluator has the capacity to perform those duties, and 2, it would be in the public interest for the Chief Evaluator to do so. I'll speak to this point a little later on because a situation has arisen where the Minister has requested and authorized me to perform additional duties. And then the Minister is also able to revoke the authority given to the Chief Evaluator. Then in terms of Section 11F, 1, 2, and 3 of the Act, the head of department, 1, shall provide the SEA with general support, which has been forthcoming. 2, shall designate officials of the Western Cape Education Department to provide administrative support to the SEA, and that was done in January 2020, and there's ongoing administrative support as the need arises. And 3, shall consider the findings and recommendations referred to in section 11D3, which covers the publishing of reports and the generating of reports after an evaluation, and implement appropriate measures to facilitate improvement. So the slides cover the functions of the Chief Evaluator, the Provincial Minister of Education, as well as the Head of Department. Then, this is the slide that I will talk to in a bit more detail. The purpose of the SEA is to conduct independent school evaluations over 2 days. So our evaluation framework covers various evaluations, but we are visiting schools over 2 days, which has proved to be very cost effective, and with regards to the instrument that we use, it is more than enough time for us to gather the information that we need to make judgments on schools. The SEA focuses on the areas which matter most for quality education: learner achievement, teaching and learning, behavior and safety, leadership and management, and governance, parents and communities. Now, these are the 5 key focus areas. And I would like to spend a bit of time talking about the evaluation instrument that we used. When we developed the instrument, we looked at the goal. What do we want to achieve? And we want our learners to achieve in all spheres of life. We want schools to offer quality education. But the key in any school, or the central person in any school, it would be the learner. So we started with learner achievement and looked at various aspects which would assist our learners to achieve. We looked at external assessments such as the WCD systemic tests and the National Senior Certificate examinations, but we also looked at what happened, the curriculum and what happens to allow children to achieve, right up to after school programs, co-curricular programs, etc. So all those factors that assist learner achievement and that ought to improve learner achievement. Then we looked at teaching and learning. And why was that the next area? Because learners will only achieve if they are taught properly, if they are taught thoroughly, and that if they are taught by teachers who are dedicated and committed. We also believe that the learning environment has to be conducive for teaching and learning to take place. So when we looked at teaching and learning, we looked at the learning environment in general. We looked at the environment in the classroom and the interaction between teacher and child, teacher and the group, and how learning took place. And we looked at assessment to see whether teachers are assessing as they go along, whether they mark work given, whether there is feedback, and can any feedback, or does feedback lead to learning? And then we also looked at what teachers do in the classroom and outside the classroom. That was important, the interaction with children. So, for example, where there's evidence that teachers are not inclusive, they are not respectful, they are non-discriminatory, that is where a school can often become a cropper, because teaching may be taking place, but not all learners feel that they belong at the school or in that particular class. And so it's important for learners to really feel part and parcel of the class, of the school, and that the teacher gives them the necessary care and support. Then we also looked at factors that affect learners and their learning. And that is where behavior and safety comes into the picture. We looked at all the factors and we built in various line items with regards to whether the school protects and cares for its learners, whether they abide by the rules, for example, of access to the school, whether people are allowed to walk through the school at all times of the day. Is the school premises safe and secure? So we look at the perimeter fences, etc. Are people able to take shortcuts through schools, etc., which would also compromise learner safety and teacher safety? We look at ablution facilities, and in most cases, this is where we look at how the general assistants or the non-teaching staff, how they play their role at the school. Under behavior and safety, we also looked at the learner transport scheme. We built in a line item about the nutrition program, and whether it is one of the important things is whether the nutrition program is hygienic, whether meals are served to the learners under good conditions, where their dignity is not impaired, etc. And then the last point there we've got a few line items on boarding facilities and whether learners who make use of boarding facilities are safe and secure. Then a critical point to teaching and learning, we looked at leadership and management, the principal and the SMT, and whether the principal and SMT drive the school, give the school direction. They're innovative and looking to improve situations and making the most of the school's resources, which would include human resources, financial resources, and any other resources. With regards to leadership and management, it's also important to note, and we have evidence to this effect, that where the leadership and management is strong and give direction to teachers and monitor teaching and learning, and don't just sit in the offices or just give instructions, but conduct classroom visits and observe what's going on in the school. That bodes well for the school, because teaching and learning takes place and the learners start achieving well. Then last but not least, we have a section on, or an area of evaluation on governance, parents and community, the key stakeholders of the school, The governance would refer to the governing body and whether the governing body supports the school, supports the principal and the SMT in any initiatives towards school improvement. Then there's a section on parents and parents' involvement in their children's education, in the life of the school, and how parents react and or not react, respond to communication from the school. And then we've got one or two line items on community, and that's important because you very often find that the community plays an important role in the school, not only with regards to safety issues and making sure that that things are going according to plan, but we've brought in sister departments, NGOs, and very critically, the role of the district, the relevant district, as well as whether there is support when necessary from head office. And so those 5 areas are key and critical for learners to achieve and for school improvement to take place. Now, once an evaluation has been conducted, reports have to be generated and submitted to 5 key stakeholders: the principal and the SMT, but the report goes to the principal, to the chairperson of the governing body, to the district director, the head of department, and the provincial minister of education. And that is where I spoke earlier about the head of department's role, in that once a report has been generated and submitted and published, the HOD should consider the findings and recommendations and implement appropriate measures to facilitate improvement. The Provincial Minister of Education also receives a copy and reads the report, because she has her function is then to alert the head of education to any exceptional cases. And when we talk about exceptions, it also involves areas of best practice. In my experience in 2020, it's definitely not all doom and gloom. We do have pockets of excellence in our schools. Then the SEA has to develop a parent report. And this is the report which will be published on the SEA website. Now, the parent report is going to be much more reader-friendly than the school report. It will be based on the reports, and I have sent copies of 2 reports to the honourable members for you just to look at. The parent report will be based on the school report, but it will be much shorter, and its purpose is to give parents an idea. And I beg your pardon, not only parents, but the general community, society at large, an idea of how a school is performing. And the rationale behind this is we would like parents to consider sending their children to schools in their areas, in the areas in which they live, because we have found that where children go to commuter schools, and one of the reports I sent this morning is a commuter school, parents may perceive the school to be a very good school, and there are aspects where the school is good, but there would be schools closer to home who offer just as good an education. And when we think about the high costs of transport, etc., and the fact that many of the learners have to leave home early, it is it can be a disadvantage, because this is why as the day grows longer, the children's concentration span becomes less and less, because they are tired because of the long distances and the long hours they have to travel. So the parent report will be published on the SEA website. A lot of work has been done on creating the SEA website. However, because of the pandemic, things came to a stop. But I would like to assure you that before the end of the year, the SEA website will be live. Since we've returned to work, a lot of work has gone into the website, and there was quite a bit of technical difficulties to work through, because the SEA is independent and must maintain its independence. So the SEA website will be live by the end of the year, and reports will be uploaded before the end of 2020. Then it is also my duty to report on an annual basis to the Provincial Minister of Education, and that would just be an overview of all the schools visited this year, all the activities conducted by the SEA, etc. I have not conceptualized the report as yet. I have an idea of what it's going to look like, but I don't want to comment further on that because of the way in which the pandemic interrupted our work. In the first term, that our evaluators were appointed at the end of January, and the first evaluations took place from mid-February. And we had planned to visit 10 schools in the first term. But on the 15th of March, when the President made the announcement that schools were going to close on the 18th, we were due to visit the 9th and 10th schools in that week. And because of the President's announcement, many schools rearranged their schedules, etc., and we were able to visit the school on the first day, but not able to complete the 9th and 10th evaluations. However, all was not lost. When lockdown started, we were able to finalize the reports of 8 schools. And I was one of the people who thought that the lockdown would only last 3, 4, 5 weeks. And as time went on, I realized that the pandemic was really going to impact on the work of the SEA. And I was very concerned that we would not be able to get back into schools at all in 2020. So I looked at the Act, I went through that carefully, and I thought about the type of work we could do. And so in one of my one-on-ones with the Provincial Minister of Education, I proposed that we revised the school evaluation framework to allow evaluators or teams of evaluators to go into schools to determine schools' response to COVID-19. And it required a lot of thought, a lot of preparatory work, revising the evaluation framework. But first of all, I had to ask my team if they were prepared to go into schools. And to their credit, they were. It was my job to provide them with the necessary safety equipment, such as disposable gloves, a flask, so that they did not ask for refresh, or the schools did not see the need to give them refreshments, etc. They had all the protective equipment, and they were prepared to go in to see what was happening at our schools. And this was at a time when there was the great debate, should children return to school or not? And Minister and I thought about all the options, and I worked closely with my team, and we felt it was worth piloting. And so what we did was we looked at the evaluation framework, and I made a decision that it would be unfair to look at learner achievement. And I felt it was unfair because this was at a time when everyone was wondering, and there was so much division. Do we go back to school, or do children go back to school, or don't they go back to school? And I was really keen to see how schools, how principals and SMTs, non-teaching staff were going to respond to the new environment. So our our revised evaluation instrument focuses on teaching and learning opportunities for our learners, behavior and safety, following all the health and safety protocols based on the DBE standard operating procedures, as well as the WCED's guidelines, leadership and management, whether each school had a temporary revised education plan, whether each school had a COVID-19 compliance officer, how they were working out their timetables, how they were using their staff, etc., and also gathering information on the number of staff with comorbidities, the number of staff who had been exposed to COVID-19, suspected cases, confirmed cases, etc. And likewise, when I talk about staff, I mean teaching staff and non-teaching staff, and the same held true for learners. And after looking at leadership and management, and also very important was the psychosocial support to everyone at the school. We looked at the role of governance, parents and community. Governance to a lesser degree, looking at whether this governing body was supporting the school, was assisting them with initiatives to make the school safe, as well as their financial commitments, and whether they were reprioritizing the budget. And then the role of parents, looking at the options parents were taking, whether they were sending their children back to school or not, looking at reasons as to why they were not sending children back to school, and as well as the community and how they were assisting the school and the role they were playing. What I should have added under parents, we also looked at how the school was communicating with the parents during this period. And something else that's very important was looking at whether the parents or the home had online learning facilities, what was inhibiting such activity, and whether parents were able to assist their children whilst we were under strict lockdown. So once we had done all, we had revised the school evaluation instrument. The evaluation team was briefed, and we also I was requested and authorized by the Provincial Minister of Education to undertake this type of evaluations, but we also needed the head of department to allow evaluation teams to authorize entry onto school premises because of all the rules and regulations governing visits to schools. Once the head of education authorized such visits, we piloted the revised evaluation instrument in 10 schools in July. I will talk about that report or share that report at another time. The results are very, very interesting, and I am not sorry that we undertook such such evaluations. It was an eye-opener to see how well, under the circumstances, our schools responded. I know that an advantage was, at the time of our visits, only grade 7, for some schools, grade 7s and 12s were present. And then as we went towards the latter part of July, a few other grades were attending school. And so one of the key issues would be how schools cope when all the grades have returned. But in July, we were very pleasantly surprised. The one thing of concern was the fact that there was low attendance at very, very many of the schools, and it was not just because learners were exposed to COVID-19 or there were confirmed cases, but there were some of the instances cited was that there were learner anxieties, there were parental anxieties, family members or the extended family members had comorbidities, and there were a vast array of reasons why children did not return to school. But that is one of the challenges that would have to be overcome for the remainder of the year. So I think, excuse me, I'm very, very happy that we revised the school evaluation framework, because once we've got our preliminary findings, we then looked at certain issues. Please excuse me. And we are now in a position to go into schools for the remainder of 2020 to not only look at compliance to safety and health regulations and whether schools have trips, etc. But we can now start looking at the quality and effectiveness of what is happening at schools. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Waddell, for that very comprehensive report or presentation that you've given to the committee. Members, I saw that quite a few WCED officials have joined us after we have started. I just want to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves for the record.
Good afternoon, Chair. My name is Sali Abrams, and I'm the Deputy Director General for Education Planning in the WCED. With that, an apology for the tardy entrance a few minutes after the hour. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Abrams.
Good afternoon, Chair. It's Mrs. Kubeshni Govender, Program Manager for Collaboration Schools.
Thank you. Mr. Eli.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. It's Leon Eli here. I'm the CFO for Education. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Eli. Members, I just want to also allude you to an omission on my side in regard to the agenda. I'm adding a number 2 on the agenda, and that would be the consideration and adoption of the draft Standing Committee on Education's Oversight Visit Week. So I'm adding that as number 2, and then the number 2 shifts to number 3. Thank you very much for indulging me. With that said, we are now going to, members, you must just, I hope that you have jotted down your questions and your input in regard to the School Evaluation Authority presentation. I will come back to that. Ms. Bardell, I'm going to ask you now if you could switch off your video camera for now. I'm going to move on to the presentation on the collaboration schools. Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking for my presentation.
Shall we assist you, sir?
Let me just, no, I do have it.
Okay, you're going to put it on the screen then? Okay, thank you.
I've got it. Does it reflect?
Yes, it does. Thank you. You may continue.
Okay, Chair, let me just do this. Yeah. Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak a little bit about collaboration schools. There are 4 parts to this presentation. I will lead it in, and then at some point, Ms. Veldman will speak a little bit about the finances of the project. And then Ms. Namfu, who's also present in the meeting, will speak a little bit about donor funding. And then we will conclude the presentation with a little bit of stats on learner performance.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis, can I just interrupt you? You mentioned Ms. Namfu. She did not introduce herself for the record. Ms. Namfu, if I can give over to you to do just that, please, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Kayakazi Namfu, and I represent the PSP Public School Partnerships Donor Group.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lewis, thank you. Over to you again.
Chair. Okay, that's Chair. That is basically the different topics that we will try to address within the half an hour. Chair, the legislative framework, we know that we have amended the Western Cape Provincial School Education Act in 2018, where we have introduced various new interventions into the Act. One of them was the School Evaluation Authority. The other one was this one about collaboration schools. Now, Section 12(1) of the Act makes provision or enables the phenomenon of collaboration schools and donor-funded schools. It's two different names that we use, but they more or less address the same purpose and outcomes. In Section 12(c) of the Act, it specifically provides for the establishment of new collaboration schools. It speaks about the declaration of existing schools as collaboration schools by the Provincial Minister of Education. That's a prerogative to do so. And then in the Act 12(c), it also spells out the governance architecture for these schools. Now, the reason for collaboration schools, it resulted from a need to legislate and regulate on provincial policy developments on collaboration schools and, as I said, the School Evaluation Authority. And what was the underpinning of this? It was basically an emphasis on quality education outcomes, accountability, and transparency. We need to link what is in the amended Act, Chair and members of the House, to the vision of this department of quality education for every child in every classroom, in every school in the province. It also, the whole collaboration school innovation links with the department's four strategic goals, which we will find in our annual APP, annual performance plan. It is about, one, to enhance performance of learners and learning opportunities. Secondly, is to expand the enabling learning environment. Thirdly, it has to do with a strengthening of functionality and accountability on school levels. And then lastly, to strengthen and enhance innovative adaptability and preparedness for our changing context. So the definition of a collaboration school is basically, it means an institutional mechanism that partners poor performing schools and schools serving marginalized communities. And that partnering happens with a non-profit school operating partner who is committed to improving the quality of teaching and learning in that school in order to substantially improve the school's educational outcomes. Basically, Chair, that is how it will then diagrammatically operate, is that it's a collaboration in this block between government or between the department, and it's important that collaboration schools can only happen in a no-fee school. Can only happen in a school that has been declared a no-fee school, and between an NGO, non-governmental organization, which in this instance, that NGO then becomes the school operating partner. That brings together, this venture brings together additional expertise into the school, additional resources into the school, greater flexibility, but also greater accountability. And then eventually the collaboration schools aimed at testing new approaches to improvement and to extend access to quality education in our marginalized or disadvantaged communities. That is another summary of more or less the same thing, Chair and members. The purpose of the collaboration school is to improve, one, to improve the quality of education. Secondly, to demonstrate effective models of partnership it's government, it's the school, it's a donor, and you've got a school operating partner. It's strengthening public school governance and accountability. And then fourthly, to implement interventions aimed at the improvement of our schools. If we look further then, Chair, to how this structure speaks to one another, is that we have a donor group who is sitting with some funding that they want to invest into education. Now, between the donor group and the provincial government, the office of the minister specifically, there is then an agreement, and a memorandum of agreement is then signed to say that the donors say that, but we are willing to invest money into a school. Government agrees and government select that school with the agreement of the school governing body and community of that school. So then between government, between the WCED, there's further then an agreement with your school operating partner. This is the NGO. And between the department and the NGO, we conclude a service level agreement. Service level agreement is to say, but this is what you're going to do. This is how we want you to do it. But similarly, between the donor group and the school, there is also a funding agreement. The donor group and the school and the operating partner, there is a funding agreement. So there are actually 3 agreements being concluded in finalizing the setup of a collaboration school. You've got your school operating partner, and then you've got the school as an existing school. Chair, the difference between conventional school, there's not much of a difference. The management, the professional management of the school still resides with the school principal. Here is a difference, is that all new staff vacancies, even if the post of the principal becomes vacant, that appointment happens by the SGB. There's a difference. Currently, in our public schools, when posts get vacant, there's a process of recruitment and selection, and then eventually the department appoints the person, and then that is the jurisdiction of the head of the department. But we must remember that it is existing schools that become collaboration schools. So we already have WCED staff in those schools. So those staff members remain WCED staff unless they prefer and indicated that they don't want the WCED to be their employer, and then they become employees of the SGB. So there's one difference. The second difference lies here with the composition of the SGB. The school operating partner consists of 50% of the SGB. In other words, parents make up 50% of the school governing body, and your school operating partner, funded by the donor, makes up the other 50%. Now, one can easily reason, if your SGB then consists of 50% parents and 50% of the school operating partner, what will happen if there's a stalemate in terms of anything on the agenda where a vote has to be brought out and there's a 50-50% vote? The Act has got a mechanism to deal with that, and the Act indicates that where there is no agreement in the SGB around any matter, that matter must be taken to a full parent meeting, which then decide upon the matter. And then, of course, the last point is that the South African Schools Act and other all other relevant legislation regarding education is relevant to the school, and the collaboration school must honor and uphold and comply with it. Chair, currently, as we are sitting, we have 13 schools. You can see in 5, we've got collaboration schools in 5 education districts out of the 9. In Metro East, we've got 5, 2 primary schools and 3 high schools. In Metro Central, there are 4, 2 primary, 2 high schools. In Metro South, we've got 1 primary school. Metro North, 1 primary school. And in Cape Winelands, we've got 2 schools, 1 primary and 1 high school. The 13 schools here are not all collaboration schools. 11 of them are collaboration schools, and 2 of them are actually donor schools. The one is in Metro East, and the other one is in Cape Winelands, the Jake Gerwel School in Bonnievale. That's the list of the schools, Chair. Okay, then I'll ask my colleague, Ms. Veldman, to speak to the funding slides.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Chairperson, through you to the committee, just an overview of how we collaborate with the partners in terms of the funding. The first slide indicates to you the 2 main funding sources that is at the disposal of these schools. Firstly, from the WCED, which is placed under the control of the SGB. In other words, it goes through the normal channel that we would allocate funds to any public ordinary schools. And the difference between other schools is where they will only get their norms and standards for operating cost. Collaboration school will now also get norms and standards for their personnel structure. And I'll expand on that a little bit in the following slides. And then on the funders side, there's basically 3 funding sources to support these schools. Firstly, it's an operational expenditure premium per child. So whatever we allocate in terms of norms and standards for a school, the operating partner obviously has the ability to invest more in a learner than what other schools have through their funder group funding going into these schools. They also have launch costs, which they use to set up the school and become operational. And then there's a portion that the funder group invests in the actual operating partner that will be running the day-to-day operations of this school. And that gives you the total picture in terms of the funding available. Next slide. Now, in terms of the South Western Cape Schools Act, it's clearly stipulated that the Western Cape Education Department should maintain the payment of the salaries of the educators and non-educators on the staff establishment, which means that what we would have paid for an educator, be it an educator managed and paid by the SGB for a collaboration school, or an educator at the collaboration school still on the normal establishment of the Western Cape Education Department, the money will be coming from us. Next slide. What basically happens, and Mr. Lewis has touched on it already, when a collaboration school is started for the first time, we determine what is the current staff establishment at the school. If it is a current existing school, and obviously if it's a new school that just opened, there won't be any staff currently at the school on our establishment. And then we determine how many staff members should there be at the school based on our staff establishment norms and standards. And we determine the differential to say so many posts are currently needed at the school to make up the full establishment. For those staff, we then provide funding through a transfer payment to the SGB into the school's bank account. Next slide. So we start with the approved staff establishment, just like any other public ordinary school, and it goes through the exact same process in terms of determining the staff establishment. At this stage, we do not differentiate between a collaboration school and any other public ordinary school. They are completely treated in the same manner. That approved staff establishment then determines the differentiation between WCD posts on our Provincial system and what we refer to as SGB posts under the management domain of the SGB in collaboration with a collaboration partner at that school. Those posts are then costed, and we provide the school with an indicative allocation, which they will receive at the same time they receive their indicative allocation prior to an academic year, starting with their normal norms and standard allocations, which will then form part of their budget planning processes before the commencement of an academic year. We also pay the first half of this tranche in November or December of a calendar year, which enables them to be ready and functional when their teachers report for duty in January. And by the April of the academic year, we will pay the second tranche, which is then again providing funding to the school for the rest of the calendar year, July to December, to support those salary payments. Next slide. At the end of each calendar year or academic year, we know that our financial years and a school's financial year is not aligned. Schools' financial years run from January to December, aligned with the school calendar academic year. We will then do a full reconciliation in terms of this funding that was allocated to the school, specifically in terms of personnel cost. At this stage, we look at the final approved staff establishment. As you know, during a school calendar year, there's normal everyday movements that takes place. Teachers resign, new teachers are appointed. That wasn't previously SGB posts, now become SGB posts. There could be growth in learner numbers, and we have added additional posts to this school at the beginning of the year. Salary increases takes place, normal cost of living adjustments, and all of these factors is now brought into the scenario to determine what should the final allocation for the school have been for this year. We also compare this with the actual payroll cost, which is now confirmed for the school for the academic year, to ensure that there is, as per the PFMA requirement, proper internal controls for funds transferred to an institution to ensure that the money allocated to the school was used for the purpose of personnel expenditure. And that would then conclude whether there is any final payment due to the school. And the kind of final payment could result in additional post allocated that wasn't provided for before, or like I've indicated, things like the cost of living adjustment that we adjust at the end of the calendar year. Next slide. This is just a snapshot of the 2019 financial or school financial year, or our financial record that we closed off in March 2020. In the 2019 school academic year, we funded 12 collaboration schools. In total, there were 278 posts at these schools collectively, of which 88 is still on the WCD establishment. In other words, we are paying them via Provincial. They are normal permanent staff members in the general sense. And then there was also 190 SGB posts, in other words, posts that are funded through transfer payments and managed by the collaboration partner. And that transfer payment totaled almost 74 million that we then transferred out and reconciled to the collaboration schools for our 2019-20 financial year. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. That concludes the financial part.
That's the financial part, Chair. We'll now look at donor funding, and this is where Ms. Namfu will come into the picture.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Just to contextualize the slide, these numbers indicate purely the donor funding. that has been channeled into the Collaboration Schools program, tracking right back from 2016 right through to our forecasted numbers for 2020. These numbers are also inclusive of the Jakes Gravel donor school, and exclude one other school that was reported within the 13 schools that were mentioned by Mr. Lewis. You will see that the learner cost increases as the number of learners are increasing across the program. And just to highlight that cost per learner figure, the initial cost per learner with an asterisk that says schools excludes the Jakes Gravel infrastructure expenditure. That would highly inflate the figures if we were to include that figure. And the cost per learner total is inclusive of all of the school operating partner and organizational development overheads, as well as the support that's provided to school operating partners in fulfilling their duties. There's also a program delivery line item, and this talks to the operational costs of running the pilot support office. As you're all aware, the collaboration school model is innovative in nature, and we've had to bring in experts who have been involved in the idea of developing networks within a public school framework. And that's what the organizational development and the development program consists of mostly. I think that's the high-level overview of the funding. So total expenditure, inclusive of 2020 forecast, is around 342 million that has flowed into the program directly from non-governmental funders. So these are philanthropies and local trusts. Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Ms. Namfu. Chair, we will now look at learner performance, and I'll ask Ms. Governor to take us through the last 3 slides.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. Good afternoon, Chair and honorable members once again. In terms of the overview of progress in collaboration schools, one of the most critical things for the collaboration project is to ensure that there is an overall improvement in learner performance, as well as school management and governance. Because we look at this program as impacting on learners, we are under the microscope with regard to what our operating partners and donor-funded schools are doing with regard to improving learner performance at our schools. One of the key indicators for us is looking at how management and governance operates in terms of the model, as well as their contribution to this learner performance. So we've seen that the quality of governance has improved significantly. Our school governing bodies have been capacitated to participate alongside the operating partners in ensuring that both of them have equal participation in school improvement. One of the vehicles used for school improvement is the school improvement plan, and together the management members, the SMT, as well as the governors are critically involved together with the operating partners in preparing the school improvement plans and then putting timelines and dates to the monitoring of the implementation of the school improvement strategies and plans. So we keep going back to looking at what exactly the governing bodies and the management members have undertaken to do with regard to school improvement, and how are they performing in terms of that year to year? What are they doing, and looking at the impact of that? In some of our schools, we were successfully able to negotiate, that is the operating partners and the governance structure. They were successful in negotiating extended school days so that our learners remain at school for a longer period of time to get intensive support. This extended school day program has seen some improvement, especially at schools like Apex High, as well as Temba, where there is overall buy-in, and Forest Village Primary, to extending the school day. Our parents have taken decisive steps in demanding quality education. We must say that our parents are held along the way to ensure that they know and understand learner performance. At one of our schools, for the very first time last year, there was an overwhelming attendance in terms of parents at a learner improvement meeting and a book review meeting. And that is also important to note, that slowly there is buy-in from parents, and the culture of parental accountability and parental support for learner improvement is happening. Our school operating partners, therefore, are also able to free the management team from administrative tasks, so that the management team can focus on instructional leadership and teacher development. In terms of our learner outcomes, Chair, if we look at our grade 3 systemic results, have we got that slide on, Mr. Lewis? The next one, please. Grade 3 systemics. Thank you, sir. If we look at our grade 3 systemic results, we look at a year-on-year improvement from the time that the school joined the program. And let's take a school like Forest Village at first. This was a new school, started in 2016. And if you look at both language and maths, you're able to see incremental improvement. The cumulative improvement shows the increase from the baseline, from the year that they began to the current improvement state. And that story continues. Now, let's look at a school such as Oranje Kloof Primary, which at the end of 2018 exited the program. If you look at where it started in terms of grade 3 language results, it moved from 6.6% in 2016 to 22.5% in 2018, and then there was continued improvement in 2019. Similarly, with the grade 3 maths, they moved from 20.8% to a whopping 62.2% share. So this is reflective of the interventions that are put in place to ensure learner improvement. One of the, perhaps it is at this stage very crucial to talk about Trevor Manuel Primary and the improvement in their 2019 language results, which was 54.1%, and the maths performance as well, which is 39.8%. So we can see a year-on-year improvement at each of our schools. When a school joins for the first time, we have found that there is a slight dip. And so you would see that with Boundary Primary, it joined only in 2019. And so it would be critical to watch the improvement there and to look at what the operating partner is doing to ensure that the learner outcomes are improved. It is also noteworthy that at Jupiter Primary, a school which began in 2019, our maths results showed 69.4%, and we will watch that now, for the future. So that's the grade 3 systemic results, Chair. The grade 6 results show a similar story. And again, here, I want to go to a school like Trevor Manuel Primary, where in 2017, the grade 6 maths performance was 13.8%, and in 2019, 62%. I'll just pause for effect there, Chair. We still have work to do in language, and Dyser Primary, which joined the program in 2018, Dyser Primary Bonteheuwel, has seen significant improvement in both maths and language. Then, Chair, next slide, Mr. Lewis, please, sir. We're moving to grade 9 systemics and the NSC performance of our schools. Thank you, Mr. Lewis, sir. We have Langa High. And if we look at the performance of Langa High, there has been significant improvement in 2019 with regard to language, as well as maths, although maths looks the way it does. Okay, and we can look at that against province as well as national. And we will note that there has been improvement. Our NSC performance for Langa High, I'll take it school by school. We have had improvement from 34.3% at the beginning to, in 2018, 78.1 and 2019, 71.8. But if we look at our bachelor passes, we have improved from 2018's 25.0% to a 33% pass. And for us, the importance is the quality of the pass. So we find that we are getting more bachelor passes, and that is very encouraging. A school to look at in terms of the intervention and what is happening, and to hold our partners accountable would be the Silicamba High. There have been some internal systemic problems, but we are saying that we are monitoring that as the WCD very closely, and that we've asked the operating partner to give special attention to the school so that we can once again improve our results there and ensure it becomes a school of quality education in a marginalized community like Imizama Yetu. Then we have Zwelithemba over 2018-2019, and there too we're looking at our operating partner and what attention they're giving and what measures they're putting into place to ensure that our systemic results improve at that school. Perhaps at this stage, Chair, it would be wonderful to look at Apex High, which is a school that has introduced a number of interventions and innovations to ensure that their learners stay at the cutting edge. We have to mention that their performance was above the provincial average, and that, again, I said the extended school day and the approach to learner outcomes at that school is telling us a wonderful story of a whole community, whole school buy-in to ensure that learner performance is at not only an acceptable level, but an exceptional level. The principal was also singled out for the COVID response and the innovation that the school used during COVID times to ensure during the lockdown that the learners were not only given instructional time, but also were able to use devices to log on and be in contact with educators. The Jakes Havell Technical High story is an interesting, wonderful story of donor funding. And we know that in terms of infrastructure alone, you know, they've plowed a hell of a lot of money in, approximately 96 million. But it's our very first school in the country to offer a 3-stream model. We find that here, where the learners, where the community and the businesses in the community are involved, that our curriculum here, the offerings we give to the learners, are looking to support employment after school and also tertiary education, that our learners are performing well. Not only are they performing well, but they are enjoying the subjects they are taking, and they're able to contribute to community development there. Just last week, the learners, the mechanical and electronics learners were involved in building their own rugby poles that they will use now at the school. And, you know, that in itself shows ownership of the facilities that are going to be used for learner improvement and development. The consumer studies girls make rusks, etc., that are sold at local markets. And we would like to watch this model carefully to see how we can perhaps replicate it elsewhere for community building and social cohesion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. It brings us to the end of this presentation. If by any means we have used unbecoming language, then I apologize, because after all, we are in the house. But that's our story. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. Thank you for both the presentations, very comprehensive. Members, I am now going to open up for Q&A. Please indicate to which presentation you pose your questions. I'm going to allow, we have enough time, I'm going to allow for 2 questions per member. WCED, I wish to request of you just to jot down the questions. I'm going to take the whole round of all members, and then only thereafter I will give you an opportunity to respond. I am noting members Bosman and Sayed.
Thank you, Chairperson. I do have more than 2 questions on both presentations, but I'll try to restrain myself.
Member Bosman, if there are members that's not going to ask any questions, I will come back to you. But for now, I'm allowing you only the 2.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, if I could then perhaps ask to Ms. Badal if we could have a copy of the SEA regulations. And then my other question is for collaboration schools. And the question there would be, in terms of institutionalizing the current model within the WCED, where does the collaboration schools unit sit within the WCED, and what are the plans to institutionalize it? And I'll hold on for now, Chair, and reserve my other questions.
Thank you, Member Bosman. Member Sayed.
Chair, thank you very much. On the first presentation on the School Evaluation Authority, I just wanted to get a sense as to what is the interface with the circuit managers. What role do, I mean, what's the relationship like with circuit managers, and how do they work together with the circuit managers? Then on the collaboration schools, I just wanted to know, in relation to the donor-funded schools, is there any requirement that the operating partners need to be non-profit organizations? If not, why not? Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairperson,
Yes,
I don't have the button. I don't have the.
We'll ask you for a while. Please repeat.
I said I have 2 questions, but I don't have the button. I'm on a cell phone.
Okay, I will note you after Member Allen. Thanks for indicating. Member Allen?
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you for the detailed presentations that were given. If I must ask one question, I'm covered with Member Syed's question. I wanted to elaborate to extend that to districts, but my question would be, in terms of visiting a school and entering the school without notice, as was mentioned, in order to seize financial records or statements, etc., when there is prima facie proof. During this time, during the last financial year, or since the establishment of the SEA, has that already happened? Are we able to get an update in that regard? But then also my second question, pertaining to the collaboration schools, I noted that in the event that there is an equality of votes at a meeting of a governing body, it was stated that if it's 50-50, the matter will then be determined by a majority vote at a parents' or a general meeting. Has that happened? But also, in terms of the 50%, the operating partner is then co-opted. Am I understanding correctly? It's co-opted. Would they then have a valid voting right in the first place? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Christians.
Chair, I think we're going to do resolutions and we'll have time for that. But I think the first question I want to ask is this: on the first presentation, there's a lot of questions, but the is that the lady has said it's best for children to go to schools in the areas where they live. Now we know there's, this education is still very much unequal, and it doesn't give us a real picture now with the COVID-19 matters in place. If she can explain that, because at the moment, if I can afford to send my child to a better school, I should be able to do that. That's the first question. The second question is, I just don't have the notes in front of me, but if we can just get indication, there is 2 donor schools. What's the difference? And I know it's in the Act, but what is the difference between a donor school and a collaboration school? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very, very much, Member Christians. Member Bosman, if it's pressing, you may take mine. Member Bosman.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't hear that last part.
You can take my opportunity.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. Chair, my next question would be around the, maybe perhaps to Ms. Namfu. If I understand correctly, the public school partnership manages 11 out of the 13 collaboration schools. If you could perhaps explain a bit more with regards to the performance of their grades 3 to 6 cohort, and also if you could give us an indication of what type of support was provided to learners during COVID. And then also, Chair, I note on the slides that there seems to be a dip as schools join the program, specifically looking at boundary primary, for example. The department can perhaps expand a bit more on what that dip would be attributed to. And if Ms. Badal can tell us what that parent report entails, Chair.
Member Karma, I was wondering where you are because I'm checking on the names. You were not there for a while, but I'm giving you an opportunity.
Thank you very much, Chair. Network issues that dealt with me there. Chair, apologies if I ask a question that has been asked already. But Chair, my question is, what the challenge that I find in what was presented in terms of the work of the school evaluating authority is I don't get much of how will this authority assist in ensuring that it bring issues of attention to the department that needs to be implemented on in the schools. Like, for example, taking us towards a position of having sure that all the schools have an enabling environment for teaching and learning, which brings me to my question, Chair, of saying, because if you look in the 2 reports, the one of the primary and the one of the senior secondary school, is that while, and you look at the recommendations, while I understand that the 2 evaluations might have happened under different circumstances, but the recommendation number 1 in the primary school says that the currently underutilized library should become a more functional library and media center so that learners can have greater access. So noting that I understand the different circumstances that the 2 evaluations might have been performed, but it makes me wonder, Chair, if does the other senior school have a functioning library and a media center? So the question really looks to, are we being taken to a direction where we are also going to realize at least a standardization of facilities that schools are supposed to have, so that we expect at least all teachers in the different school to put an effort so that it excels. The last question, Chair, is it's also to the school evaluating authority that in the two reports I don't see a platform created for teachers to voice out maybe challenges that they might be facing which impact on their ability to do more or teaching capabilities. I don't see them reflected. It might be that there is that opportunity when the evaluation is done, but I don't see it reported so that it gets the attention of the department and, for example, the attention of the committee also, so that we're able to exercise our oversight role. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to Ms. Bardell first to respond to your round of questions, ma'am. And thereafter, Mr. Lewis, I will go to you and colleagues for the response in terms of the collaboration schools presentation. Ms. Bardell, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the first question, I will definitely circulate a copy of the regulations to the House. The second question went around interface with the circuit manager. The interface that the SEA is independent. So when a report has been finalized, it is submitted to the Provincial Minister of Education. The Minister of Education submits the report to the head of department, and the head of department considers the findings and recommendations. And this distinction has to be made because the SEA has to maintain its independence. The head of department will then inform and keep his officials informed, from his DDGs right down to chief directors, etc., district directors. They will be informed of what needs to be done. Also, it's
Ms. Padal, we have lost you. May I request IT just to assist Ms. Padal?
Chair, she's back in.
Okay.
Somebody moved me.
Ms. Padal, we lost you for a while.
I was explaining that I submit the report to the Minister of Education, who in turn submits it to the head of department. So so that the SEA's independence is maintained. I do not interact with any of the departmental officials. Once the head of education receives the report, he will then channel it to the various officials. It's also important to remember that the district director receives a copy of the report and is kept in the loop in this way. So back to the whole issue of the interface with the circuit manager. Another important aspect in the full evaluations that would have taken place in the first term was that at every oral feedback session, a circuit manager was present to hear the findings of the evaluation. So that is the interface with the circuit manager, whilst maintaining the independence of the SEA. Once the circuit manager and district director have the report and they know what's going on at the school, this is when the circuit manager sits with the principal and discusses the report and incorporates recommendations into the school improvement plan. It's important also to remember that there is a period in which a school can refute a report. They're not quite a grievance process, but this is why we send draft reports to the schools, and they submit their comments before the report is finalized. Now, the reports that were distributed this morning are final reports, but they are still in draft form. They were finalized at a time just as we went into lockdown. So some work has to be done before the final report is sent to the 5 stakeholders. But the principals and the chairpersons of the governing bodies have received the draft reports. Those are the reports that you have. Then the next question was with regards to going into schools without notice. And I'm pleased to say thus far, which is something I think I mentioned, that we have not, there hasn't been a situation where we have gone into a school without notice. There hasn't been a whistleblower, there hasn't been any suspicion of schools involved in financial mismanagement. So up until the end of, up until mid-March, we followed the annual program, which was scheduled for 2020. So there's been no need to go into a school without notice thus far, and hopefully it will remain that way. With regard to the question of attending schools out of one's area, it's definitely the parent's choice. But not all parents can afford to send their children to school out of the area. And so many parents incur high transport costs. And the point I was making is that many learners have to leave their homes early and return late. And so it is not an indictment on anyone who can afford to send their child to a school out of the area, but once the reports are published, it will give parents a good idea, and as the website is being used and reports read, parents will get, and the general public and the community will get a good idea of schools, of good schools that are in their areas. And so it simply means that a parent will have a wider choice, because of, instead of assuming that their child is getting a better education at another school, their child may very well get an excellent education in the same neighborhood. So that's the purpose of that. It's definitely not taking parental choice away from the parents. With regards to the parent report, there are the 5 key areas are on the report. The findings will remain the same. It's just that the format will be more user-friendly. For example, we'll have a little map of where the school is situated. We'll give some biographical details about the school, whether it's a no-fee school, a fee-charging school, etc. There'll be a legend with icons to depict certain not images, icons to depict certain, I just can't get to the word now, definitions. So there will be an icon to depict a definition. So that if a parent is illiterate or semi-literate or very well read, the person reading or looking at the report will know what is meant. Hopefully, we will test it, but that's the way it's going. The next question with regards to the attention about the reports and what is happening with regards to make sure that the SEA fulfills its mandate. Once something irregular or something that should not take place be picked up, once there's a finding that is cause for concern, attention is brought to the provincial minister, who in turn will inform the head of department. And the same process will follow as with regards to how we deal with the reports. That I will not get involved with any of the departmental officials, but it will be from the chief evaluator to the minister to the HOD to his or her officials. With regards to the comment on the libraries, now in that particular school, that recommendation was brought to the fore because the library was very well stocked, but it was underutilized. And if a school has a well-stocked and resourced library, it ought to be used for its intended purpose. So that was why that was a strong recommendation. It is unfortunate that when schools are well-resourced, if they do not use those specialist rooms for the intended purpose, it means the learners suffer. It's all good and well to say, but we have reading corners in the classroom. There are many learners who want to be able to go and sit in a quiet area and enjoy reading. And one cannot refute the fact that reading is beneficial in many, many ways. And this is a school where the children were right from the learner achievement, they were high achievers. Those were inquisitive, curious children who would benefit more, not only from good teaching practices, but being able to read and to understand and to learn through enjoyment. We do not compare schools. Each report is based on what we find at a particular school. However, we use the same evaluation instrument at each and every school. So if at the high school, no reference was made to the library, then it means that all was well and good. So if you look at the two reports, they are two different schools, one a commuter school, one a suburban school, and one that is very, very well run with committed, dedicated teachers, the other where you have some committed teachers, you have management that's in flux, that could become very good, but there's been a change in management which has possibly led to the situation and in which the school finds itself. And just to illustrate a point, the primary school, when we sent that report out, we got many comments that had to be addressed. At the high school, I sent out a reminder about that the date for comment had passed, and I was still keen to hear what the comments were, and the response I got was that there was no comment. So that in itself tells one a story about different styles of management. It could be that the school simply accepted the findings. Anyway, then the other point about the reports and the teachers challenging or teachers bringing for talking about their challenges, that would come up during interviews, and it would also link closely with interviews with the SMT, with the principal, and also with learners or with parents. And the nature of the SEA report, it's a general report. But this is why it's important for the circuit manager to be present at the oral feedback, and it's also important for the district director to get a copy of the report and for them to read and know the contents of the report. Because there are line items about certain challenges that teachers experience, and when teachers have difficulties and problems, is there an opportunity for the teachers to go on staff development courses? Does the school offer it in-house? Is it via the district? Is it via any other organizations? And my last comment is, whilst it's a general report, so even if you pick up something about a specific teacher, the teacher is not named. It is a report based on the findings at a particular school, and it depends on circumstances, it depends on the context. So you will not find a teacher being named in a report. There will be reference to possibly the foundation phase, the intermediate phase, or something to that effect, but it will not be teacher specific. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Ms. Badal. Now, members, if you have follow-up questions, I'm going to ask you to hold onto them until the next round. I'm giving over to Mr. Lewis, Ms. Veldsman, Ms. Govender, and Ms. Namfu. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I will deal with the three easier questions, and I'll leave the other difficult ones for my expertise that lies within Ms. Veldman, Ms. Govender, and Ms. Namfu. I think
so,
the second
round. Mr. Lewis?
Ja.
So dit is nie waar dat die wysheid in die grysheid is nie, as jy so sê, nê?
Nee, ons het die wysheid lê in al onderwyse vrouens. en ons eer hulle daarvoor. Chair, just on the three easier ones, you know, the institutionalization of collaboration schools in the department. It sits in this branch, which I'm leading, the branch institution development and coordination, more specifically in the directorate is governance and management. And the reason why we have placed it there is because we have in that directorate already our independent schools as a specific sector are sitting in that directorate. So it was one way why it has been placed there, but it belongs in this branch. And as we roll out more schools, we will start to institutionalize this And Ms. Governor, who is actually a circuit manager from the District Central, has been seconded to the directorate and to the branch, to lead and drive this project. The second question of Mr. Syed around the donor-funded schools and an NPO, and I think it links up with the question of Member Christians of the difference between donor and collaboration schools. I think there is only one difference for me between the two schools. In a collaboration school, you have a donor, but that donor is not directly involved in the school. The donor and the department appoints a school operating partner, and that school operating partner should be an NPO. The donor itself cannot be an NPO. The donor is the people with money, etc. And that is the difference. In a collaboration school, the donor is sitting a little bit outside, and the school operating partner is driving the processes in the school. In a donor school, the donor is part of the school and driving the school and driving the processes of interventions in the school. Then the 50-50% vote balance, and whether the members belonging to the school operating partner who's sitting in the school governing body, they are not co-opted. The school operating partner who has 50% of the votes in the SGP, they are there legally by means of the act. So they're not co-opted, and therefore they've got voting rights. Ms. Namfun, Ms. Governor, can you deal with the others?
Thank you, Mr. Lewis, sir. The question around the equality of votes and whether or not there have been instances where parents were invited to a meeting where they had to exercise their rights in decision making. That has happened on occasion, Madam Chair. In one instance, the parents voted to keep the schools as collaboration, to keep the school as a collaboration school. And then later, at another school, when there was a stalemate and when there was conflict, it was taken to a parent meeting, and the parents, because of circumstances within that community, had decided that they did not want the school as part of the collaboration model. Those were just the instances. In all other cases, the governance structure representing both parents as well as the operating partner are encouraged to come to consensual decision making, and if needs be, the district and head office assists to support that consensual decision making, Madam Chair. I'm not quite sure, Madam Chair, if I listened carefully, but there was a question around the circuit manager's role. The circuit managers are involved in the schools. They continue to support the schools from the district side. These are, at the end of the day, WCD schools, Madam Chair. And there are termly oversight reports that the circuit managers write. And together with the program manager, the circuit managers also have meetings with the schools and the governance structures. Would they also look into the school improvement plans, how they're formulated, and whether the action items are delivered on or not? Thank you, Madam Chair. Have I been covered?
Ms. Governor, I'm just wondering, there was a second question from Member Bosman around what is the reason for the dip in performance at some of the schools?
Mr. Lewis, Ms. Namfu is going to respond to that.
Okay, and then Ms. Namfu can do so.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. There were 3 questions raised, and I'll start with the question around the cohorts. I'll direct Madam Chair to slide 26 of the Collaboration Schools slide pack and talk to what we were trying to pull out with the cohort improvements. What that represents is the same group of learners who wrote the grade 3 systemics in 2016. That's the same cohort that wrote the systemics in 2019. And what we're seeing from that analysis is extremely exciting to us across the PSP schools. We're seeing a positive outcome. In fact, the learners are going from strength to strength, which is a testament to how learners perform after an extended period of being within the program. Comparative analysis from our side has pointed to that this is not the normal trajectory of learner performance when going from grade 3 to grade 6. Both nationally and provincially. So we're pretty excited about that. This is pointing in the right direction from our side. Then to answer the question about the dip in boundary, the same slide points to, in fact, slide 25 and 26 looks at the boundary and DISA primary. I'll first talk to boundary because it followed the same trajectory. If one looks at slide 25, you'll notice that the 2017 systemics for the grade 3s was at 21.3% pass, which then dipped down to about 6.6 in 2018 once the school joined the program. This was obviously disappointing to us, but once we started unpacking what sat behind that, it was definitely what we're now seeing in existing schools as an adjustment year. That's the year when the school is adjusting to the introduction of learner interventions, potentially curriculum adjustments, and also just the introduction of operating processes. So that often results in a dip within the first year, which is what we're seeing at Boundary Primary. Then you'll notice that for the 2019 DISA primary results, it goes from 6.6 right up to 29.8. And we're expecting that to continue on that positive trajectory. And that will be due to the interventions such as learning labs, the extended school days, when those are introduced into particular schools. There was also a question around the COVID response across the PSP schools. Across all 11 PSP schools, there's been an intensive approach to support schools through the positions on the SGB to respond to COVID. Additional resources were raised specifically for this purpose and have been channeled towards ensuring that our schools are in a position to support learners. First of all, account for every single learner that should be in the school, to partner with parents, to work more closely with them, to use the available resources provided by the WCD and nationally, and to then work with teachers around upskilling them to transition from, I'd say, the pre-COVID way of engaging with learners to where we are now. Our schools are at different points on this trajectory, but they've all made the shift. We are ranging from developing learner management systems, which have allowed some of our schools to remain on track for the year and cover more curriculum than would ordinarily have been possible without the intervention. And we didn't only focus on curriculum. We were also providing additional psychosocial support during this time, as well as additional food and home support during under lockdown. And we're hoping that this is going to support particularly our matrics as they head into exam time, as well as ensure that our learners aren't further disadvantaged by the response, by the impact of COVID in their learning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there still any outstanding questions, members? All questions been answered. Anyone want to pose a follow-up question in regard to the responses that you have received? No one? Anyone want to pose a new question? I will open up for a second round if you wish to. Going.
Chair.
Member Sayed.
Yes, Chair. Sorry, I couldn't see the hand function.
Okay.
I just wanted to, can I do two questions or can it almost only be one?
You can do two.
Okay, this is on the School Evaluation Authority. I'm not the Evaluation Authority, on the collaboration schools.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get a sense also, the collaboration schools and the donor-funded schools intervention was started, I understand, as a pilot program that was envisaged to continue for 5 years. So September 2020 marks the end of the pilot program. I just wanted to get a sense as to what factors have been considered in determining if this is the most effective program for schools and for learners. Then also, what monitoring process has the department does the department put in place to ensure that the collaboration school and the donor-funded school interventions are relevant and successful? Yeah, that was it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Sayed. I also want to ask a question around the school collaboration program, and I note that we do not have collaboration schools in the Eden Karoo, the West Coast, and the Overberg. Are there any collaboration schools in the pipeline for those districts? Mr. Lewis? Thank you. That's the round. I don't see any other member who wants to take up the opportunity. Mr. Lewis, then that is the round.
Chair, thank you very much. The first question about the pilot. Remember, we started the collaboration schools before the enactment, before the act was promulgated. And therefore, there was a pilot. So with the act now being promulgated, we actually don't need the pilot because it's now law. So we do it if we have schools who raise their hands to become collaboration schools. We will reach out, we will do the assessment. One of the criteria is that the school must be willing to become a collaboration school. The school governing body must be willing to share that governance power that they have, and the community must be willing to embrace the concept. Those are part of the criteria that's important. From the information that we've shared just now, Chair, the additional funding, 300 plus odd of money coming into schools who would not have had that money otherwise, and just enable those schools to do more than what they ordinarily would have done with the norms and standards funding that they normally get. But also the level of other external expertise into the school to boost the management of your SMT at the school is significant, and we shouldn't underestimate it. The monitoring currently of your collaboration schools, we've got quarterly meetings, and at the quarterly meetings, your school operating partners must report on various categories of information. And in that meeting, we have our donors also present because it's also their interest, that the donor money that they put into the school, that they see the necessary yield out of that money. Yes, Chair, whether there will be collaboration schools in other districts, maybe I must leave that to Ms. Namfo and Ms. Govender to respond.
Ms. Namfo?
Thank you, Mr.
Or Ms. Govender?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lewis, sir. Madam Chair, there has been requests from schools in the West Coast District to become collaboration schools.
Yeah.
Up until now, we have not had a significant interest from donors or funders.
Yeah.
With regard to the Eden Karoo and Overberg districts, I'm pleased to announce that we've got possible donors, funders who've come to the fore, who've requested to become involved, and who are also prepared to contribute, like the Jake Scarborough Trust, towards the building and establishing of schools. So we are in what we call proposal conversations. We are hoping that this will see fruition and that the collaboration model will extend then to the other districts within the province, Madam Chair.
Okay. May I just ask, Ms. Govender, the proposal for the Vrouwater Hoër School to become a school of skills, is that not an opportunity to mirror the Jake Scarborough model in the West Coast?
You're absolutely right, Madam Chair. It is an opportunity, and we will invite the donors, the funders, the current donors and funders, and also possible donors to walk alongside us if they can.
Okay.
That would be a wonderful opportunity to take that Jake Scarborough model into the Vrouwater area as well, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Members, if you have exhausted your questions, then I would close the question and answer session. And that leaves me to say thank you very much to the Department of Education for the comprehensive presentations today. And I wish you all well. And thank you for attending this standing committee session with us today. Please go well and be safe. With that said, thank you very much. Goodbye to you all.
Thank you, Chair.
Members.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
Members, bye-bye. If we can just do our administrative task attached to the standing committee. Wasima, can I proceed?
Yes, Chair, you may go ahead. I've only got one recommendation that I've noted. If I've missed any, can members please let me know?
Okay, members, I'm going to take your round of recommendations. I'm going to start with Member Bosman. Any?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, from my side, if I could perhaps ask that we get any evaluation reports on how the collaboration schools have worked in the Western Cape. If there's been any evaluation work done by the WCED, as well as the evaluation reports done by organizations such as the Public School Partnership or externally. And if we could also get a comparative report in terms of how collaboration schools track with other public ordinary schools, because the information we got was only the collaboration schools competing with collaboration schools. If we could have that, Chair, that would be very helpful.
Okay, thank you. Member Allen?
Chairperson, I'm covered. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Sayed?
No, Chair, thank you. I'm covered by Member Bosman 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Christians?
Chair, I don't know if they gave us the 13 schools, the two schools, it's donor funded schools, and 11 is collaboration schools. If we, I don't know, but can we get who's who's involved in those schools, which NGOs and so on?
Okay, which partners?
Yes.
Okay, Member Karma. Sorry, Member Christians, my apologies.
Just the last one, Chair. Yeah, just the last one. I think the School Evaluation Authority. I think that person is is very much accountable just to the minister. I don't see there's no role actually for the HOD. I don't know, the previous discussions we always said it's a political appointment, but I don't know. If the minister says you can't go into that school, what recourse does they have to go into a school if the political head says you can't do it?
On that, can I just say that there has been a request from Member Bosman for this committee to be furnished with the regulations. Can we workshop the regulations and then come back to the actual question that you are now posing?
No problem. No, I'll go with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Kama?
Nothing on
Member
my side.
Kama? Sorry, your voice is very faint.
Sorry, Chair, nothing on my side.
Okay, thank you. Then I want to ask, I would propose that we visit 3 of the primary and 3 of the high schools in this collaboration model, that this committee follows the presentation. Wasima, if you can just give back a summary of the recommendations requested. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Through you. The Member Bosman has requested the regulations pertaining to the SEA to supply the committee with that. He's also requested any evaluation reports pertaining to collaboration schools, public schools. Also, there has been a request for the partnerships that are with the two schools that are donor funded and the 11 schools that are collaboration schools, and then to visit 3 primary schools and 3 high schools. Member Bosman had elaborated on his recommendation, and I will get that from the audio. Also, Chair, one more thing, I'm not sure if I missed it. Is there a request for the regulations of this Act?
Wasima, just say that again. We lost you.
Chair, the last one is the regulations of the Act.
Yes.
Is there a request for that?
Yes, I think Member Bosman has asked that, didn't he?
He asked for the regulations pertaining to the SEA, not the entire Act.
Okay,
that was
then
passed
it's
in
the entire
2018.
one which will include, please. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then, members, in regard to the amended notice, I just want to ensure that all of you have received the program for the Oversight Visit Week.
Yes, Chairperson, we have.
Okay, then members, that is the program that we are going to work on. In regard to the standing committee members that are normally part of this committee, we have also extended the invite to member Marie, who will also come along. And then there are two of our regular alternate members who have also indicated that they would want to embark on.
Peter Marais.
Yes, Peter
It's
Marais.
going to be fun.
Also, two of our alternate members have indicated that they are going to embark with us on the oversight visit. Nearer the time, Wasima is still working on the logistics. We are waiting for reply from what is this department? Procurement. We are waiting supply chain. We are waiting on them for some input with regards to what we have asked. I note your hand, Wasima. You want to say where we are in terms of logistics?
Yes, Chair. I need a full register of all members that are going to attend, because I'm going to book flights, and once I book the flight, if a member cancels, there is cost implications. So I would need members to send me an email to confirm that they will be attending the oversight visit, please.
Okay, by when do you want this email?
By tomorrow, please.
Okay. Member Syed, I note your hand.
Chair, thank you very much. And I think it's quite a good program. I will attend and I'll send an email. I just wanted to indicate also that that from the ANC side, there will be two members, but they won't be part of the trip, kind of. I mean, they won't travel with us. But I just wanted to indicate that when we're in Mossel Bay, member Dugmore has indicated that he wants to accompany us when we visit the school. And when we're in West, member Barnes will also want to do the same.
When
That's
we
just
in Beaufort West.
Yeah, when we're in Beaufort West. So
Okay,
they won't travel with us or anything.
Okay, but that is because there are constituency heads assigned to those areas, to those municipal areas.
Yes.
All right.
Remember that.
Okay. Member Mitchell will also then join when we in Beaufort West because of that same reason. That's fine. Members, with that said, I think that we have covered the agenda for today. I just want to say thank you very much for being in this standing committee meeting today. I want to wish you well for the rest of the day, and please keep safe. Then Wasima, I want to extend our heartfelt thanks to you for the arrangements around this meeting. I also want to extend to Bendaza for joining this meeting, and then a special thanks to our IT staff who have made this journey smooth. Thank you very much. Members, with that said, I wish you well, go safe. Thank you.
Chief.
This meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.